I am a temple who walks the earth. My womb is fertile for giving birth. I am a woman planted in truth. I grow my branches from sacred roots. You are the form of who you want to be. So come untethered, your soul is free. We're here to heal, we're here to thrive. We are a dream who's come alive. We light a candle, our hearts awake. Illumination for God's sake. A revelation for God's sake. An evolution for God's sake. An inspiration for God's sake. 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 For God's sake.
And so it is. Hello, Essence. This is Jody England, and you are listening to Wild Soul Medicine Radio. So here we are back. We are back after a couple weeks off where I was deep in initiation and journey and surrendering and letting go and dying and returning and here we are. And so I really, I was tempted to say I missed you or I missed being with you, and actually, it wasn't that. I was so deeply in that there was nothing to be done but be, and so I'm still really in that space. I'm in that space of physically still recovering and also spiritually emerging is what it feels like, except for it's not an act of emerging. It's not like a striving or a becoming or there's no ing to it. It's just very much this presence, which in some ways to me feels fragile. And I'm not sure that it is. It's fragile because it's different. It's very different than the warrior that I typically operate as. And it's also so resilient and deep and permanent, And so I'm really just I'm just here in this pause, in this in-between place, and I don't actually know what I want to talk about today or what even wants to be talked about. There were certainly a lot of forces pulling me out of this space just before we dropped in together. And so I'd like to invite us to just take some time here together to presence ourselves. And so whatever you're doing in this moment, if it's possible for you to stop doing it, I invite you to do that, to just let go of anything you're doing, to multitask, to step away from your children if you're, if that's possible, or pull over to the side of the road if you're driving, or take a minute and sit down and just allow yourself to be all the way here, as if you could retract your tendrils of all of the energies that you have doing something else, that you have outside of you right now. And just allow yourself to come fully in. And I feel like this is something that even as we work to enlighten or to become conscious, or we meditate, or, there's so much directionality in all of that. And there's this way that I feel like we're always tracking. Are we doing it? Did I do the thing? Am I meditating? Am I in? Am I in the space between thoughts, which is, of course, not a space between thoughts, even the thought of that, And it's what I've noticed is by necessity, as I've been called so deeply in through this process of pain and initiation, it's allowed me to really see just how many of those tendrils I still had out, how much I was still tracking. And it felt very scary to go so in, to actually let go of everything that I hold and everything that I know and everything that I have felt responsible for in order to just, it wasn't even by choice, it wasn't like so I could survive. It was like the pain of the process that I was in was such that it was so complete. It was almost like the pain had me by the chin and was saying, be here, be here. There was nowhere else to be. And in that experience, I really have had a new awakening of what being here so completely really means and what it looks like. And so this is the curiosity that I think we'll begin to talk about today, because I don't have a how-to manual on okay, this is what you should do, or this is the process, or this is what needs to happen. And I also think that there must be some medicine in my story, because there seems to always be. And I know myself as a person who activates others through my own experience. So I'm trusting that there's something here as wild and crazy as this ride has been, that somehow it will mean something to you and it will mean something to your path. And so let me just settle in and see where to begin. Yeah, so I'm called to check in with this space where, a few weeks ago, before, in one of the last couple shows that I did, we were talking about this idea of the space in between, right? Of like transformation, letting go of this idea that there is, like one trapeze to the other, and that the trapeze is the real thing, when actually the space in between is really what's real. And, and I think a show or so before that, I talked about how great my life was going and how I, was tempted to hold on to that, but then also know better than to say like, oh, okay, I want more of this. And so I want to, I think I'll start by telling you a bit about what happened, and then we'll see where that takes us. So, the reason I want to share this is because there's a way that our egos hold on to other people's stories or experiences. And so, there's this insidious way that we give our power away to people, even though I constantly say, don't do that with me, and be in yourself and all of that. Our ego does it anyway. And so when you hear something about someone that you admire or that you think has something going on that you aspire to have or be or do, your ego is like, oh my gosh, well, if that can happen to her, then it can happen to me. Or, gosh, I don't want to be on this path of transformation if mine has to look like that, or if it has to take me so down and out, or, so whatever your story is about sickness, about weakness, about vulnerability, about burning down your life, certainly witnessing this process will give you every opportunity to see what portals for clearing are up for you. Because in reality, there's nothing here. There's nothing here that means anything about me or about you. And also it means everything, right? It's like the truest sense of the word of one side of the coin is just the same as the other. There really is no here or there. There really is no burning down your life or not burning down your life or anything, like it's none of that. So I just want to say that by way of inviting you to feel whatever you feel, if you feel irritated by this conversation, if you wish we would get on with something else, like just honor that in yourself. That's totally how my warrior would have responded to this conversation anytime before now. And if you tend to really align with people who are sick and get involved in their drama, that may be happening for you now too. And just say hello to that. Notice what that does for you and what it doesn't do for you. You know what I mean? Like, I really want this to be a welcome conversation. You don't have to be any way other than you are. And so we'll have that kind of going on in the background. And certainly we can entertain more conversation about that over in the tribe. So if you're not a member of the tribe, it's facebook.com/groups/Wild Soul Medicine Radio Tribe. And so you can post whatever you're feeling or reactions that you're having to my being away or my being back or this whole conversation. And if you want to chat with us right now, you can do so at wsmrchat.com, www.wsmrchat.com. All right, so here's what happened. I went into ceremony on the equinox, and it was by design, and I knew something big was going to happen for me there. Like, I could feel the stars aligning. There were so many energies in the air around, the blood moon and the eclipse and all of the pieces, right? And then the change of seasons. And also my birthday is coming up, which is it's the Saturday, April 11th. And so I knew it was a big deal. And I also have an intention this year to fix my body, right? To fix these like ongoing health issues that really have become so debilitating, where I'm sensitive to everything and allergic to so many things. And many of my systems are getting so out of alignment, there's really no way to ignore them anymore. And so I've tried over the years to work with this and really haven't had much success. In fact, in a lot of ways, they were getting worse. And so I went into the ceremony not knowing exactly what my intention was, other than I really wanted to make some headway on fixing this body thing. So what ended up happening was, a whole series of synchronicities and miracles, and they weren't all fun. It actually started with quite a disappointment. I went to see a medical practitioner prior to the ceremony who I had high hopes for, and after an 1.5-hour session, he's healed one of my very good friends from something very similar to mine, and I just went in with so many high hopes. And after an 1.5-hour session, he basically said, "I have no idea what's going on with you. I don't know what this is about. I don't know. I can see that it's something, but it's none of the things on my list." And he muscle tested, 1 billion different medicines that might work for me, and none of them worked. And I mean, this has been my experience, right? And so, and oh, by the way, here's like the only 5 foods you can eat for the next month, and then come back and see me, and we'll see if anything's better, right? And so I really left there just so deflated and disappointed, and yeah, I've really had some attachment to fixing this body thing. So I went there and was really received so beautifully into the arms of this goddess women, and this beautiful container of love and support. And so in 2 nights of ceremony, I was able to open to and ultimately release a piece of my soul path that I have been working at for thousands and thousands of years. literally thousands and thousands of years. And for those of you who have been listening to the soul medicine path work, you know, what happens is our souls are on a certain path, and we do it lifetime after lifetime. And then, you know, we have specific events within lifetimes that really solidify it in for us. But, you know, we can work the healings from within one lifetime, or we can work them on the whole arc of the soul path. And what ended up surfacing for me was something that actually feels like it originated from the origination of my soul path. Like from the moment that I chose this journey as a great mother, warrior, this particular battle, which is part of my warrior template, has been raging on all fronts. It's something that I've been fighting in every dimension at all times. I was not aware that was happening. It's not something that I was consciously choosing, but in hindsight, it's something that was always in my awareness. You know, it was always part of me. And I would say about 90% of my capacity, of my attention was on this battle, in a relationship with this other entity, this being that was quite intense. And how it affected my physicality was, you know, this battle would kind of like rage through my body. You know, at times we would sort of tumble from dimensions in through this body and crash the shit out of it. And so I always had this sense of like, oh, it's pointless to fix this body because it's not going to be able to heal. Like, this is not the time. It's not an efficient way to do it, or this isn't the process that's going to actually heal it, you know? And I know I'm speaking kind of cryptically, but I'm doing so because I really want you to get the essence rather than the specifics, right? Because the essence is that there are these long arcs of soul contracts, right, that we're up to. And what ended up happening for me is I got really present to what this relationship was about, and I got some beautiful facilitation and support around ending it, around completing the contract and letting it go. And when that happened, my body moved, my soul moved into so much peace that I was really like clear that I've never felt that peace outside of being one with spirit ever, right? So since this journey of individuation, I've never actually had that level of peace in any lifetime in any capacity. And I remember many, 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 many of my lifetimes, you know? So it was so beautiful and so blissful. It felt like a birth. It felt like a homecoming. I felt like I was finally free, and there was so much joy, and my beautiful husband was there, and we were just celebrating. Like, you know, he was looking into my eyes and he said, you know, all of these years that we've been together, it was always clear when you were with me that you were fighting some battle somewhere far away all the time. And now you're just here, you know? And it was so affirming. It was so affirming to be seen in that way, and to know that I'm not crazy, and that, you know, that I'm not broken and I'm not doing it wrong. And, you know, after all these years of working on myself and working on my emotions and working on my triggers, and, you know, and to still have this like, underneath, you know, this feeling of like, of fighting. And that is the path of the warrior, you know? And also, it's not just, you know, there are things, right? There are reasons why we're fighting. And as I look back on it now, I can see the reason that I was battling this being for so long it was all part of the plan, you know? It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't an accident. It's not like I did something wrong. It's part of the plan. And what it was doing is, you know, it was keeping me from bringing the fullness of my light all the way here, all the way anywhere, and it's amazing when I look back and see what I've been able to create and accomplish while doing all that, while multidimensionally fighting a being for thousands and thousands of years, done pretty well. And also it's time to come home. It's time to bring some of these contracts to a close. And it's not just me. It's not just me. From what I'm hearing from my clients and my colleagues, there are many of us right now who are letting go of these old relationships. We are bringing cycles to an end. We are finding our way here to this incarnation, which feels fundamentally important. This is the time. This is the place for us to actually come and bring all of those eons of knowledge and experience and learning and consciousness and awareness, bringing it actually here fully down and in to a human body, to a human experience, to a human consciousness. And so the ceremony was amazing. And when I came home, my body really had been taxed by the process. And so I knew I was going to need some recovery, but I was really fine with that. And I felt hopeful for the first time, like, okay, my body's going to really be able to heal and things are going to be good. And I'm going to have so much more freedom to be able to do things that I can't do right now, like have dinner and have a conversation and, go places where there are smells and, all kinds of amazing things I was contemplating. And so I got home on a Sunday night. On Tuesday morning, I began leading the magic school call. And right when I picked up the phone, I had this like searing pain in my left midsection. And it just continued to get worse and worse. So that's normally a 2-hour call. About 45 minutes in, I had to stop and go throw up. I came back and tried to continue. And about 50 minutes in, I just said, I don't know what is happening to me, but I have to stop. I just have to get off the phone right now. And what proceeded from there was really about a 10-hour journey of absolute agony. And it was ultimately a kidney stone, and it was totally not a kidney stone. Do you know what I mean? It feels like it minimizes it so much to say that's what it was, because it was really a journey. It was a continuation of the journey. And in retrospect, releasing that relationship in the first ceremony was so easy by comparison. And I was kind of like, wow, that was pretty easy compared to what it could have been. And then I get home and it really was, it was an ego death. I mean, that's just what it was. Funny now that my that my ego has experienced death, it doesn't really want to name that as what it was, because it seems a little grandiose, but what happened is, I've always been one to say, like, everything is energy. So anything physical you can fix with energy. And I don't go to the doctor. I've taken 1 round of antibiotics in 10 years. We barely have health insurance because we just don't use it. And so I really did not want to go to the hospital. And on the heels of this big ceremony, I was like, oh, this is just an energy thing. We can fix this, And so Viv drove up here, and my husband and Viv were, midwifing me through this process. And I was in so much pain, like way worse than having my children. When I was in graduate school, I was hit by a car when I was walking across the street. I tore 2 ligaments in my leg and had a collapsed lung, and many maladies from that. And this was way worse than that. I mean, it was so intense, but I didn't know what it was. And so I kept, looking for like a way to move it, a way to fix it. But like, it hurt so bad, my brain couldn't even work, and I went out and laid in the yard, and I was in the bathtub, and I was on the floor, and I was, just moaning and we called in some of the healers that I work with, and nobody had anything, and so my favorite and most regular healer, Sway, was tied up, and she couldn't get with me until like 5. So we all were holding out for that, right? Because she's worth it. So we tried and eventually I finally got on the phone with her, and about 10 minutes in, she was like, I think you just need to go to the hospital. And at that point I had nothing left in my tank. So I said, yes, let's go. I can't take this anymore. And then, of course, there was a 2.5-hour wait in the hospital, which was a whole nother set of learning. And then finally some relief. But, the relief, interestingly, came in the form of what I desired, which was like some pain medicine. But then it also was a flood of it, right? And so, again, I don't really interact with Western medical too much these days, but it's like, great. So here's some pain medicine in your IV, and then here's some anti-nausea medicine because you're going to get nauseated from the pain medicine. And then here's an antibiotic because you might, have an issue with that. And then here's some dye for the CAT scan. And then here's some medicine for the side effects of the dye, blah, 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 So I could feel my system being flooded with poison. And it was just more of a descent, into like, surrender, letting go of control, exploring the space of like, if this is what this is going to feel like, I wish I would die, but I don't want to die. Like I want to live and I want to be here. And I kept having this like urge to want to say to my husband, like, I love you and I've loved our life. And if I don't come back from this, and then, my brain would say like, you're not going to die. They're probably going to fix you, but it was really so much of this. This is what ego death is, and, I was just going to say, I don't recommend it, but it's like, I totally recommend it, but it's not pretty and it's not easy for sure. And it's not a thing that you can choose, and it's not a thing that you can desire or strive your way to. It's like, I feel like in some ways this is the message that I have so far, which is, just keep doing your work. You just keep doing your work, and then things happen, and I've been talking with my students about this as well. We've been exploring this idea of like what this brings up in them and their attachment to not having a painful process or not having this type of an experience or, those kinds of things. And it's like, every single piece of this process for me has been magic. I wouldn't change one piece of it. I wouldn't go back. There's nothing that is wrong. I would rather not go through it again. And if I did, I did. You know what I mean? It's that kind of there's such a freedom in having experienced it exactly the way it is. And even throughout it, there was a place in me that was like the witness, that was completely peaceful, knowing like, if I die, I'm complete. And if I live, I'm complete. And also, I am this very astute student, just watching what this is and being willing. I'm just here, being willing to be led and shown. So what ended up happening is they diagnosed I had a really huge kidney stone blocking the whole left side of my ureter. It actually had just gone in the top, and so it was completely blocking any flow at all. And as is Western medicine, right? There's no urologist available for a day and a half. So here's a bunch of pain medicines. So go home and take these. And so there was a whole day and a half of just being like really medicated and having every side effect of every medication, which is typically how my system rolls, and total agony, like to the point of, if wind blew on my skin, it just felt like a razor blades. It really was the most physical pain I've ever felt. And, as a person who has not liked to be in the body, it was surely an interesting experience. It's totally not what I would have thought, which would be like the way to get me in the body would be some experience of like coaxing me in or having a lot of pleasure or bliss or, or Kundalini awakening, or like something that had some pleasure to it. But instead, something that was so agonizing. And one thing that was really interesting is prior to going into the ceremony, I had sort of a latent intention where I thought, I'd like to heal my body so that I would really want to be in my body, that I would want to take care of it, that I would actually be interested in, living in it and enjoying it. Right. So what ended up emerging, because it was this long process, right? So 1.5 days on the pain meds, then visit to the urologist and him saying, oh my gosh, it's so blocked. We have to put a stent in so we can drain your kidney because there's toxins building up in your system. And so they did. So that was anesthesia and more journeying. And, I was everywhere. I was seeing everything. I was, connecting. I was drifting. I was experiencing the very here and now presence and love of my husband and my children and my friends who were calling in and offering me healing sessions and loving me and holding me and working their magic from their own grids. And then finally on Friday, actually having this procedure where it's called lithotripsy, where they do this sonic breaking up of the kidney stone, but it's really brutal. So they do put you to sleep for it. But then when I came home, I was actually peeing out pieces of tissue, so gross, so violent feeling, and from every orifice, my nose was bleeding and, through my intestines and my bladder and my body, completely, they had blown out 2 of my veins, putting the IVs in. And so I've got bruises up and down my arm and the place where they do the lithotripsy, looks like it got shot by a shotgun. So this is intense, so intense. And I was still in a lot of pain, and I came home from the Friday procedure and said, no more pain meds. I can't do this anymore. It is killing me. And so I just went off of them and again, just journeyed into this other realm of both being with what was. And I don't know if I can fully explain, but as a galactic tracker, warrior, there's never been a way that I've surrendered like this. Even if I was sick, I would have this urge within my system to be I have the ability to stand up and just say no to this, because that's what my warrior would typically do. And that's what I've done all these years to all of the health problems is just I'm just not participating in that. So I'm going to drag this broken body around behind me while I go do everything else that I do, and there wasn't actually the ability to do that. And so I was this sort of weak little kitten, that didn't have a choice, but I also wasn't bummed about the choice. I was just so curious, well, what does one do if one can't track and know and see where this is all heading, or if one can't say no to it, or you have to literally, my husband would have to get in the shower with me and hold me up because I couldn't even stand up to take a shower because I was so dizzy and disoriented from the medicine. So anyway, it was really about a 7-day journey back of, having no muscle tone for 4 whole days after the Friday thing. So, and then having all of my ribs being out of place from the lithotripsy. And so, waiting a couple of days and then having to go to the chiropractor and get my ribs put back in. And you know what I mean? It was a complete dismantling. And what it felt like, what it still feels like to me is that all of that had to happen because it was like a restart in my system. It was sort of like shaking loose any of the imprints that my body had of how it had worked in the past. It was shedding off any of the energetics within the tissues and the skin and the organs of my body so that it took everything down to zero. And there was a point where, in this recovery period, I was just beginning to get my ability to have cognition back. And I was watching Oprah, and she was interviewing this woman who wrote a book called Ruby. And they were talking about the audacious hope of rooted things. And this idea, it chokes me up every time I say it. This idea of like seeds, that are blowing on the wind, and then they find a crack in the sidewalk, where there's just a little bit of dirt, and they make their way down in there, and then they just start putting out their little tentative hairs of roots. But they root nonetheless, and they root joyfully, looking for the sun, and not lamenting that they're in a crack or that they don't have enough space or that it's not this or that, but like just audaciously hoping and reaching for the sun while being fully here, and I felt that. I actually felt in myself this audacious hope of, I want to be here. I want to be here. I want to live. I want to have an experience filled with joy and freedom all the way down and through, not just as a soul, right? Like I've been able to touch that in the experience of the soul, but I haven't been able to bring it through in an incarnated way. And so I just felt, as I started to put myself back together, or more like be put back together, because I really wasn't doing anything myself, I started feeling this experience of here-ness, of like a blank page. And I spoke with one of my mentors, Andrea, who will be on the show at some point. She's an amazing medicine woman and spiritual sister. And I'm in the process of making a medicine drum, which I've mentioned before, but I haven't talked much about yet. And the process goes like this. So we've had a few sessions where we've talked about some things and the medicine that I bring and what the drum might include and things. And then you go about choosing the hide, right? And so the hide that you use on your drum, the first phase of that is death, right? And it's because an animal has to die to provide the hide for the drum. And so what tends to happen in the process is whatever you need to die to will surface as you're calling in the hide for the drum. And so, in the fashion that I tend to roll, I basically called in my own death, And when I talk about ego death, if you don't know what that means, what it means to me is really, it's a very complete and intense letting go of the grasp that the ego has on us. And, I've worked the ego for 15 years in the work that I do. I've worked my own ego that long. And this is completely different. It's to me, it's kind of like the difference between being in Shavasana, which is the dead man's pose, right? So we play at it and we try it on, and actually dying, right? Like it's a completely different experience. So this ego death for me feels very complete, not as in I don't have an ego anymore, but complete as in everything that could be taken out has been taken out at this point. And I have no illusion that, there's going to be more. Like I have not crossed a finish line. I'm still very much undone. And yet this is, big. It's big deal. So, as I was speaking to Andrea about, just kind of checking in with her, like, this is what's been happening and this is where I am. And she was so beautiful. And she was saying, I can see the length of the contract that you've just been in. And, it feels like such a celebration to be present to it here at the end of all of these ages, to watch a soul come to a completion of this magnitude. And And I said, and I don't know what it all means. I don't know what happens from here. And she said, sometimes at the end of a contract like this, you just get a blank page. You just get a blank page and it doesn't have to mean anything. It's kind of like pulling a blank card from the tarot deck, like maybe there's nothing to do. Maybe it's just beingness, and it feels like that. And it feels really, it feels like a warrior who's been in battle and knows for sure that the battle is done, that the ceasefire is complete and lasting, and that there are just thousands and thousands of years of post-traumatic stress to offload from my system, and that I'm just really relaxing into, 10,000 years of rest is what it feels like. So I've been doing a lot of laying around and just like thinking but not thinking, just being, just like laying in the hammock for 2 hours and feeling the breeze on my skin. And, laying in my bed and letting my husband hold my hand and it feels like grace. It feels like grace, and I wish it for you. I really do. And it's coming for you. It's coming for you. And I did this for you, and I did it for me. All of these thousands of years who've done it for us. And so I feel like in this moment, you can even just bask in the vibration of it, in the arrival of it, the peace that's possible right here. It's just peace. And you can have it by just matching the vibration of what's here, That's how energy works. We can just match what's present. And so it is. And so it is. And so we sit here in this blank page, with, I can feel that the old habits of, like my mind will go towards, okay, so I've been resting for a while, and then now what needs to happen? Or, so does this mean something? And then what do I do next? And so am I going to California this weekend like I planned or not? And then I come back to just being, I come back to this sense of it's okay to be in a blank page. And in some ways, there's part of me that's been thinking like, okay, so it's sort of like a vacation. Is that what a blank page is? It's like a vacation. But then is the vacation going to end? And then what do I do? And what I feel is there's such a resting in to what is that I don't actually care. I don't actually care if it's a vacation or not. I don't care what happens from here. I know that things will, I know that I will do some things, and I'm totally up for being led in what direction that is. And I'm also so content being exactly right here. Exactly right here. And it feels like, this blank page it really is nothing and everything. It's nothing as in there's nothing to do and there's nothing to know and there's nothing you need. And there's also, it's everything. It's everything. It's essence. It's grace. It's soul. It's peace. It is the new earth. This is what we're creating. And from this space, one of the things that Andrea said to me, which was so beautiful, she said, what you've completed is that cycle of being the warrior where you have to constantly draw your sword and be championing the cause, And what you're moving toward is being the light. Like what you've just stepped into is now you're the warrior with the sword that never needs drawn. And I feel like that is so where we are in this evolution of history, where our soul paths are coming to, it's not a completion, but it's like it really is the next iteration of the soul path. And so, for mystics, it will become, being the one, right? Because mystics are so in oneness. It's like being the one and the earth, right? Like being both. And so it's not having to like join with the earth, but like actually being the earth. And the earth is the one, and it's all of us coming to that place, it's the heroine not striving to be authentic, but actually being so herself in the world that she is the world, and so what I say is, because the ego is looking to strive and is looking for, so what do I do? So how do I get there? But am I there? And, and like, I hear you, I get it. And what I would say is, how you get there is by working your soul path. The way that I was able to step out of this relationship that catalyzed all of this shift is because I've spent 15 years intensively unraveling my soul path, moving the things that I could move and see, and working the dynamics that were presenting themselves and using the triggers as portals to more freedom, so that my system was aligned in such a way and clear in such a way that this magnitude of transformation was possible. And so, just so many blessings on the work that you're doing. It all matters. It all matters. And, at some point it may lead to something, and something is nothing, right? I mean, it's maddening and it's beautiful and it's just true and it just is, and I feel honored to be on this walk with all of you. And I thank you. I thank you for your love and your witnessing and your holding, and for your excavation and continuing to show up when it gets hard and when it doesn't look like there's a way out. And then when we need a respite, we can just arrive here. We can just step one click to the left and connect with the new earth as she already exists. Where everything is so much easier. And we get to stand on the bridge and drum as we call ourselves home. And so, my sisters, I feel complete with our time today and really moved by where we all are. So thank you. Thank you for being you. And thank you for being on this journey with me. Until next time, bye for now.
We light a candle, our hearts awake. Illumination, for God's sake. A revelation, for God's sake. An inspiration, for God's sake. Illumination, for God's sake. For God's sake. For God's sake.